Hello and welcome back to Fullerton College's Prepress class. This is Professor Ben Hewitt. Today we're going to take a look at PIA's Prepress Training Handbook Manual, Task 6, Module 1. That was a mouthful. Digital output, we're going to talk about the Prepress Workflow. Let me take a moment here on a side note to say that I find the name workflow depressingly boring and unbearably corporate. It's up there with synergy, guys. Unfortunately, I don't have a whole lot of a better name for what it is. This is going to talk about a little bit in detail about what it is we do overall. What is the overall job and responsibility of Prepress? What are our goals? And look a little bit, and we'll use more of a clickbaity title here, was Prepress, the magic behind the means. I don't know, something like that. Anyways, let's take a look. So we're looking at what an output technician does. I should also say that this digital prepress workflow chapter is also a good one to tell you about some of the jobs you might want to look for out there, because depending on how big a print shop is, some of the roles we talk about in this chapter are going to be specific single or multiple persons doing that job, not necessarily a part of one of too many hats you might wear at a small shop. Although you do learn a lot at a small shop. I kind of like the experience. You get to do more things. The bigger you are, the more specialized you are, for better and worse. Okay, we're going to look at the different functions in a prepress workflow solution. Now, the word solution on the end here does mean not just what it is we do, but what is all the equipment we use. There's not a lot of great names for this at this point. Sorry. We're going to look at rasterization and screening and what they do inside the RIP. And we're also going to talk about imposition and trapping. Although not in that much detail, there will be chapters later on. Since we're just starting a new section here, this module is an introduction to basically the rest of our semester. So I'm not going to go into unbelievable detail on this because, oh, we will. We will. Designer versus prepress, the fight of the century. And in fact, it's less of an opposition, less of a fight, actually, as it is really trying to disentangle two very commonly conflated things. In fact, designing and prepress are a Venn diagram, and more often than not, your job is that football shape in the middle of it. So the designer, at least when you're, for me anyways, in my career, I can say personally that for me, this wasn't a question of if it was me or somebody else, but which hat am I wearing at the moment? Because design and prepress overlap a lot. The good news is being good at prepress makes you better at design, so that helps. So the designer's role is to help create a design. The designer is there to make sure that the layout looks good, is visually pleasing, and is communicating the correct information, be it for entertainment, for sales, for religious purposes, whatever reason you're printing it for somebody, it's coming across correctly to the viewer and addressing the correct audience. And all the colors look good, pleasing, not in the color management sense, but in the people like red and red's on my flyer sense, in the selecting the correct mood and all of that. After that's been approved, once the design has been said, okay, great, let's go, then the job comes to the printer. And that's where we in prepress, or if you're both, you take off your design hat and you put on your prepress hat, and then you say, okay, now I'm going to look at this to see if it's good to go and help get it ready to go. Prepress is about prepping files for print. It's about taking things that come in and making them ready to go. So we've already looked at this a little bit. The pre-flight technician and the file repair technician, what do they do? This is kind of a last semester topic, but as a refresher, pre-flight is looking for problems. It's diagnosis. It's seeing it's looking at the files that come in from clients and determining before you run them how well they're going to run when you put them on press. That is pre-flight. Pre-flight is not fixing things. For popular shows that are popular probably a decade ago now, I'm getting old here. You guys remember House MD, which is kind of Sherlock Holmes in a medical setting with Hugh Laurie, who I better know for his Blackadder days. Anyways, House did not care about healing people. He was a doctor, but he wasn't a caring doctor. He hated his clinic hours. He didn't really sit there and help people feel better. That was boring to him. All he cared about was figuring out the mystery. What's wrong with this person? Why are they sick? This is a mystery disease. I love it. Once he's solved the mystery, then it's boring. Someone else can handle patient care. Ugh, yuck. All he wants to do is find out what's wrong. And that is also pre-flighting. Pre-flighting and printing is not about fixing things. Of course, you need to do it to be able to fix things, but pre-flighting is the investigation. It's the detective work. It's the looking out there and seeing what's wrong and what's right. Some credit to some clients do here and there. Sometimes they do get it right. And it's a delightful day when that happens. But anyways, pre-flight is about figuring out if it's going to work and then why it's going to work or not work. File repair is a separate task. File repair is going in and doing the actual surgery, doing the patient care. File repair is, if you're talking about more the police detective side, that's actually making the arrest and building the court case. But if we're talking about pre-flight, that's just figuring out what's wrong. File repair is fixing what's wrong. And that can be done by you. It can be done by a specific technician at your shop, or it can be done by the client. For those of you who've been around me a little while, you already know my answer to this question. File repair, whenever possible, should be performed by the client. Legally, it gets you off any sort of liabilities for ruining their print job and takes away their chance to say that you ruined their print, their brochure that was never going to work in the first place. But also, on the positive side, and why I like it, the more you get your clients involved in the file repair, the better their files become. And when you get a client who gives you files that are ready to print right off the bat without having to make a lot of changes, your life gets easier and your business becomes more profitable with less work. And after all, isn't that the dream? Also, I do kind of like helping people. It's one of my problems. So the output technician. After pre-flight and file repair, then it goes to output. The output technician, again, oftentimes this is just another hat that you switch onto your head here and you start doing a different task. But in a big shop, this could be a specific person or a group of people. Output technicians take the files that have been repaired and approved to print and make the plates. They have to do the trapping and the imposition. And these functions are what happens on the thing called the Prepress Workflow solution, which again, is a really boring name for a really cool elite hacksaw rig of computers all linked together to do our job. Let's take a look at what that is. So the workflow solution here is all the steps that used to not be integrated. Again, prepress has always existed. In the oldest days, prepress was typesetting. Prepress was literally taking the lead type and putting it together on composing sticks and making the bed of type to print on in your letterpress. Prepress is making your screens for screen printing. Prepress now, at one point, again, in my father's age of offset printing, prepress was the art of taking photographs, exposing film and shooting that or exposing that film negative onto the light sensitive printing plates to make your press plates. Now it's done digitally, and they used to be very much offline. Previously, you'd have one person doing the stripping and the paste up, where they cut and glue the different pieces together to make the flats that they're going to photograph and expose the plate from. And the different person will do the exposure, a different person will do the plate developing, and all of that is different people and different places. I mean, you do your stripping on a light table, and then you take it over to the exposure section, a giant process camera to take your pictures and to make your film, and you develop your film in a dark room because that's what you do with film. But now we do it all in the same small series of linked computers. You do your design. Actually, even the design is still integrated now too. You can do the design and the imposition and a lot of this stuff all in the same computer, all in the Adobe suite. Sorry, I'm old. Cloud, all in the Adobe cloud. They don't call it the suite anymore. That ended with CS6. Now we're into the Creative Cloud. Anyways, the different things that have to happen. A PDF needs to be made. The PDF needs to be pre-flighted. Trapping needs to happen. Imposing needs to happen. Ripping has to happen, and output. I'm not going to talk about them yet because here they come. Now, typically it's multiple computers. Not sure why this is the case, but some of the computers tend to like to be Macs and some of the computers tend to like to be Windows. Our job got a lot easier once OS 10 came out and Windows, I think XP maybe a little more recently than that. Once they both basically ripped off Linux for the back end, they became a lot more simpatico on computer networks. This used to be a lot trickier to get them to agree with each other. Now it's much easier to send files from Windows to Mac and Mac to Windows and nobody cares. Everybody's happy. because they're all using Linux backend. Anyways, the workflow solution is multiple computers, and that lets the processing happen. As computers get better, you use less and less computers to do it. Typically speaking, the bare minimum I've seen is 2 computers. One computer is the design layout computer, and it handles things like PDF creation as well as the graphic design in the first place. And the second one is the RIP, and that's the raster image processor. We're going to get to that again in a moment here. So let's go back onto script here, and I'll get to that when we get to that. The most important file type for you is the PDF. Again, in case you've forgotten, very importantly, for those of you who like to be pedants, it is perfectly suitable to say PDF file, although it's a little odd to end on F and start with a F sound again. At least it's not like ATM machine, because PDF file, the PDF stands for portable data format, not portable data file. So you can go ahead and say PDF file as long as you want. And then you could be even more like super pedant with mind powers, correcting people who try to correct you. Maybe this is why I don't have friends. Anyways, you create these from PostScript, but you can also create them directly from your design software. And believe me, we are going to talk about this, but not this week. That'll be for a future week. So the first thing you do is you make a PDF. This is only necessary if you're using PostScript first. Cliff notes for things I've talked about before and we'll talk about again, just to make sure we're on the same page here. PDF was derived from PostScript data. PostScript is the secret love language between computers and digital printers or digital output devices like plate makers. Digital printers like Xerox and Canons and many lesser brands out there, and digital plate makers like the ones Fuji makes, those all use the same language to define the graphics that they are going to turn into dots and put on the page or put onto the plate if it's a plate maker. That is called PostScript. A PDF is a much more streamlined version of that PostScript. It's like the Cliff Notes of PostScript. Some older systems and some older design software are unable to create PDFs directly. They're not native to them. Sorry, Quark Express. You're still good, but you're not that good. Quark Express, for being a non-Adobe product, doesn't have that power to directly make a PDF. We'll talk about this later. It will make PostScript as if it was sending it to a printer, and then it will distill that PostScript. It will take that PostScript and convert it to a PDF. This is not a lost in translation problem. It'll still come out pretty dang good, but you do lose one or two things. If you make a direct PDF straight from a design program, you do a better job preserving transparency effects, gradients, and vector information. But other than that, you're fine. It also allows more editing later on. If you don't go through PostScript, you can re-edit a PDF much more successfully than if you do go through PostScript. But anyways, if necessary, you make a PDF by taking the PostScript from the output. Sometimes you can just make a PDF directly. So to do this, if you are using the PostScript conversion method of PDF creation, you'll actually do a file print. Or even if it's behind the scenes, like in Quark Express, it will basically be doing this. File print tells your computer to take the information from inside your Adobe InDesign or your Quark Express or your CorelDRAW. CorelDRAW is legit. It's just not currently the most popular system out there. Or, God help you, you could be doing it out of Microsoft Word. Ugh. Now, again, on record, I don't hate Microsoft Word for being itself. It's just not meant for this job. Microsoft Word is taking a, school book report writing software and trying to use it as type composition software, and it is not. You can kind of make things look pretty, but it's not going to give you the same level of control. Anyways, so if you do a file print, it will convert everything your computer sees into the type of information that the printer wants to see or the plate maker wants to see, and that's called PostScript. And if you say print and then you choose from the print option instead of go to press, you could say, oh yeah, by the way, make it a PDF. It will take the same data it was going to send to that printer and instead save it in a PDF version of itself. But you can also do file export. And if you do an export, especially from InDesign, or although Illustrator is even more direct than this, export to PDF will generate a PDF using the back end of the Acrobat software to directly create one based off your design rather than trying to convert PostScript. And this is a much more successful way of making PDFs that is much more stable and more editable in the long run. As we already talked about, it will preserve vectors, transparencies, uh, effects like drop shadows, although you really shouldn't be using those anymore. It's not 2003 anymore, guys. But anyways, we're going to stop here and we'll come back to finish out this chapter in another video.